Well, here we are. We're back in the garden today on yet another beautiful day in paradise, that is Scotland. Now, I live in Moray, or Morayshire for its full name. And I have to say that the weather here seems to be better than it is anywhere else in Scotland. Anyway, enough of the prattling. Beer. This is what we're talking about, these babies. Now, it might have been that you've been to one of these sexy modern new beer emporiums on the high street, and you get all different beers and everything. Well, those shops is what they are. Basically get their beer in these. These are the new version of kegs, not like the old big aluminium things that they have in the pubs. These are lightweight, they're pressurised. The beer is in that silver bag you can see inside here. It fills the keg as they put air in the top, or CO2 in the top. It squeezes the bag and the beer comes out. But when it's empty, when it's finished, they're left with these things to try and recycle, and they're not easy for one of these shops to recycle. So maybe you know I am. I knocked on that door really cheeky like and said, can I have a few? Because I could see straight away a gold mine here, an absolute treasure trove. Now let me step back a little bit. Currently, I'm potting on me tomatoes. Now, as every good tomato grower knows, once you get past this size, you need about a 20-litre pot to put them in if they're going to go in a pot. Now, 20-litre pots are not cheap. Are you thinking what I am? These are way bigger than 20 litres. Now, they're plastic. They come in two forms. There's this one, which is the see-through clear one. This is a single layer of thick plastic. Then they come in this size. You can tell the difference because these have got a liner and they're double walled, so they're double skinned. So these ones slightly thicker and harder to cut into, but a jigsaw or a bread knife goes through that really easy. Whereas this, I use like a little old kitchen knife, put a hole in and cut around it. Now, let me show you this one first. If I was to try and cut into this now, I'd take up and waste a bit of your time. So I tell you what we'll do the Blue Peter run. Here's the keg. I was going to go smoothly into, and here's one I prepared earlier. Now, as you can see, to draw a line around it, I literally just took a pen, a marker, stuck my finger on the side and then rolled it. And as you roll it, it puts a line more or less the same all the way around. Once you cut into it, you take the liner out. The whole lot comes out in the water. Now, we'll come back to this in a minute. What you're left with is a perfect, nice, rigid 20-odd litre pot for free. Now, it needs a bit of drainage, so we'll go high-tech here. Can you hear that all right? That's it. And you know what? That pot is now prepared for growing. So I can fill that up with compost, get my tomato plant in, job done. Give it a good watering, make sure I keep it watered. Now, some of you might think, well, it's clear-sided, so as the compost gets a bit wet, you might get some moulds forming. Well, that's not a problem, because what you can do is you can take a bin bag and just pop a bin bag open inside here, tear the bottom so the excess water goes out, just hang it over, and then there's a black plastic between the sunlight and the compost. No mould. Good way to do it. So I said we'd come back to this bit. Well, again, not wanting to throw anything away, I thought I could either make myself a pretendy steering wheel, or again, taking a sharp pocket knife, if you cut out this bladder, I should have had this done beforehand so I could look really posy, but if you take the bladder out completely, what you're left with is this. Now, is that not just a fancy growing pot? I fill these up with compost, pop a couple of holes in just the same. But I fill these up with compost and I put spring bulbs in them, or I put salad veg in them, or I put spring onions in them, and I just pop them in the garden like that, and I just use them as if it was a nice shallow pot. Works great. This also does not get thrown away, because this is brilliant thick quality polythene. So I quite often I'll open these up, and I know this is going to look really cheap and chatty, but you open these up, you fill that up with some of your old soil and old compost mix, you fold them over like this, staple them, and what you've got is a perfect grow bag, or a couple of holes in the bottom, fill them full of your compost and put your potatoes in and grow them. Use them like a potato bag. They're absolutely solid, they're really strong, they're very rigid, and you know what, they grow fantastic potatoes, and I speak from experience on that. Now that was the single layer one, but if we go back to the double layer, same idea, cut the top off, take out the inside, put that away for a minute. Now it looks like we're left with the same thing we had before, thick pot, and you could use it just like that, a few holes in the bottom, but I found out that you can actually loosen the inside and your inner wall comes out. Now don't get too excited over this like I did, mind. I was over the moon when I saw this. I'm a great lover of the Victorian gardeners, and they had these wonderful cloches made from glass, these bell cloches. You can't get them now, too expensive. But look at this. If I just take off that poly cover, and all it is a thin bit of polythene, look what I'm left with. A cloche for the garden, or better still, the bottom of this one is all open, right? So the polythene that's inside here, if we take a bit of this, and we don't have to be too precious with this, because all we're going to use it for is to roughly put it into the bottom to stop the compost falling through. That's all it is. Now if you imagine we fill this up with compost and we'll put our plant in, this will then fit beautifully, whoops, beautifully, as if by magic. Mini greenhouse. To buy that, it would cost you a fortune, and you can make one yourself in 5 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is, when I can get this off, I'm going to fill this with compost, I'll put a plant in, and we'll pop the top on, stick it back in the garden. Come on, you bugger, get off. There we go. So this is a load of my own homemade compost. I don't measure it. I don't check to see that it's got the right pH or anything like that. I literally just fill it up, put the compost bin, bit of old soil mixed in with it as well, and as normal, a couple of handfuls of either fish blood and bone, or in this case I've put chicken pellets in, and all that does is it enriches the compost so it lasts a bit longer. And as if by magic, the shopkeeper appeared. When your roots are like this, just open them out a little bit to stop them cuddling round. Then when you put the hole in, remember, plant nice and deep. You want the soil coming up to here. So you get it in. I'm going to take off that little extra bit of weed that it's been growing with. Pop the plant in and firm it down. Now, I've purposely kept the compost level quite far down. The reason for that is, as this starts to grow, it will likely start to throw out a couple of little side shoots, and then I'll put some more compost on at that point. Now I've also made sure I only put one plant in here, two, and it would be too small. I've put one in here because I also want to grow some basil around the side. But for now, you might just make it out. There are suckers already growing on these. Now I do not want a bush tomato. If I leave these suckers in, every pair of leaves will throw out side shoots and it'll turn to a bush. I want this to climb. So I'll simply take out, nip off those little side shoots, and that's it. I'll give that a good drink, then we'll put it in the pot. So we give this a bit of a watering now. Remember that compost's pretty dry, so it'll need a good drink, and then I'll leave it about an hour or so, then give it another drink. Now remember, always put a plant label in, otherwise you'll be like me, a total numpty, and you'll forget what you've put in. Mine, for me, it never really matters much anyway. So we take our lovely shiny top, which might go in a little bit easier now there's some soil in there. I'll say that again, should I? It's never going to go in. There you go. So you can either push that down like that, and if you're going to grow outside, you put peppers in these little peppers. You can grow anything in them really. Doesn't matter what your weather's like. I've drilled a hole in the top. I'll take a stick that will actually fit in it. Pop that in there. That will also help keep the top on. If I put a few little bits of tape on here, blowing in the wind, keeps the birds away as well. So from one old keg, which I wanted to show you one, from one of these, I'm getting a bell jar, I'm getting a plant pot, and I'm getting a bird scarer. And also from the bottom bit, I'm going to cover that up with compost, and I'm going to fill that full of seeds. And I've decided, because I like radishes and because they grow quickly, I'm just going to put a whole load of radishes in there and wet it, and it'll just poof. So I hope you've enjoyed this little hit, really, on what you can do with rubbish, because my garden, as my wife says, is just full of rubbish. And I think she's right. Anyway, I've got another little idea coming up for you on how you can save money on your basil plants. Because if you're buying basil, it's expensive. Well, here's a way to turn 50 pence into a few quid. Catch you soon.